2 steps forward in September and now 3 steps back in October. The fall in GDP in the month revealed by the ONS continues a pattern that has haunted the British economy for 2 years, and there is just no forward momentum. A fascinating graph posted by Panmure Gordon economist Simon French illustrated it well. For every green bar of hope above the zero line showing monthly GDP growth, there is a red bar of despair as output slips back again. And Jeremy Hunt's job to get the economy going again is looking increasingly like the labor of Sisyphus, the king of Greek mythology and the fame that was condemned by the gods to roll a boulder uphill forever. Even the normally chirpy Chancellor seemed downbeat in his comments, saying it was inevitable that GDP would be subdued during a period of high interest rates. Those rates should at least start coming down by the halfway mark of 2024, lifting some of the pressure of consumers and business. But with the energies of Downing Street likely to be consumed by the endless Rwanda saga well into the new year, the political focus on the bigger economic picture is likely to be blurred at best. And Rishi Sunak's government has failed to give hope to a thoroughly dispirited electorate with a vision of how a post-Brexit Britain can thrive and prosper. The UK economy may be bumping along the bottom more or less in line with its European peers, but were they not told that it would be better than that? Unshackling the UK from the sclerotic Brussels bureaucracy would liberate Britain and put it on a higher growth trajectory closer to the United States and Asian rates. So they were promised. Instead, they have ended up with EU levels of growth, essentially flatlining, with none of the benefits of the single market and other EU club membership perks though. And the Irish agri-food industry also faces the first wave of new Brexit rules, as all food exports to the key British market will be documented before embarkation at British ports next month, and with checks at border posts still slated from April, as a leading expert has warned now. Aidan Flynn, the chief executive at businesses group Freight Transport Association Ireland, whose members are at the front line of the long-delayed Brexit rule, said the risks for things to go wrong with supply chains and for food suppliers selling across the Irish Sea have risen significantly. The European Union, after the Brexit transition period 2 years ago, had imposed its customs and declaration checks, including on the island of Ireland, for all goods coming from Britain. But London had delayed imposing reciprocal checks on imports from the EU coming into Britain. The British government, including under the former Brexit Opportunities Minister and then Business Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg, appeared to hesitate should its border checks at Channel ports lead to further delays and further add to shortages and the prices of fresh food in its supermarkets imported from the continent and Ireland. They have now put a schedule in place for the likes of export health certificate requirements from January 31st for medium and high-risk agri-foods, and each category of food product has a risk rating, as Flynn said. It is going to be a big change for Irish exporters into GB in particular, and they need to be ready for it to get the health certificates from computer systems at the Department of Agriculture to meet the new demands, is what he says. Food products, which will be part of all the 75,000 odd codes linked to products likely to be carried by British trucks for export, will require to be pre-registered on computer databases. Without the IT certificates, food exports at British ports arriving from Ireland and the continent won't get through. After January, there are other deadlines, like in April for the introduction of the requirement for physical checks on products of animal origin, but it looks likely the introduction of these checks at the British borders of Irish goods will be further delayed, because the border posts at the key Holyhead port, as well as at Liverpool, have not been built yet, he said. However, from the end of January, hauliers carrying exports of many Irish food products bound for Britain will be halted from driving onto ferries at Irish ports without the IT certificates. All going well at Holyhead, there won't be delays, but the further rules for physical phytosanitary checks on the loads due in April look likely to be delayed, possibly by 6 months, because Britain doesn't have the physical infrastructure in place. And that's quite interesting again. The Irish hauliers are concerned about the additional costs that will apply under British rules. The British market is massively important for the Irish agri-food sector. A lot of exporters are also importers, and there is a risk of apathy around these deadlines because late January looks like it will happen, as Mr. Flint said. And also the value of goods sales from Great Britain to Northern Ireland dropped by 2.4% in 2022, as official data suggests. And meanwhile, the value of goods imported from the Republic of Ireland, the wider EU and the rest of the world all increased. The data needs to be treated with caution though, as it is not adjusted for the impact of inflation. Trade figures are closely watched by politicians to assess the impact of Northern Ireland's post-Brexit deal. That deal, known as the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Windsor Framework, keeps Northern Ireland inside the EU single market for goods, creating a trade border for goods flowing from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. The flip side is that goods can flow freely into Ireland and the wider EU as well as the UK internal market. The framework is intended to encourage businesses in Great Britain to keep selling into Northern Ireland. Ulster University economist Esmond Burney, who has been a critic of the Windsor Framework, said, "The new figures do not prove trade diversion, but suggests it is highly likely. It is also very likely that this represents a shift to higher cost suppliers, hence long-run harm to the economy overall, notwithstanding gains to particular businesses," he said. The new figures from the Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency show that £43.4 billion of goods were purchased in Northern Ireland in 2022. That's an increase in value of 8.8%. It is important to emphasize that the impact of inflation means the volume of goods purchased will not have risen by that much and may even have fallen if you calculate it in the end. Most of the goods purchased, almost 24 billion worth, were purchased locally and increased in value by 11%. Goods purchases from Great Britain were worth 11 billion, that's down by 2.4%, while imports from Ireland were worth almost 3 billion, up by 4.8%. Goods purchases from the wider EU were up 8.3% to 2.2 billion, while rest of the world goods imports were up 47% to 3.5 billion. And meanwhile, the figures show the value of Northern Ireland's exports and external sales rose sharply, but again, the impact of inflation will have flattered this performance. The rest of the UK remains Northern Ireland's biggest external market with goods sales of 9.6 billion, up 17%, and 6 billion of services with up 12%. The Republic of Ireland is the biggest export market with goods exports of 4.6 billion, up 15%, and 1.7 billion in services, up 29%. And overall exports of goods of services to the rest of the EU also went up by 2% in goods and 16% to the rest of the world. And if you want to know more, the next video is right in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.